you are in Pittsburgh, presumably at a Marriott hotel, because that's
Of
how.
course, I'm in a
Raiders
dimly
roll.
lit Marriott. Yes.
Yeah, and so at the
Is
dimly
it like in
lit
the
Marriott.
afternoon? Like, what is the weather like in
I
Pittsburgh?
didn't want
It's
to
so
open the
dim like that.
windows because I thought it would be like weird backlighting. This is why
Yeah.
I'm not a podcast producer or a television. This is why I'm a writer. Let's be honest.
Yeah, no, you can't open. If you open the blinds, it's going to look like you're in the witness protection program.
That's what I was worried about. Yeah.
So we'll leave that. But you're in there. It's Chicago. It's Pittsburgh. It's Erik Karlsson's debut in a Penguins jersey. That's exciting. But I think
right.
Connor Bedard is going to take up a lot of the focus tonight. So give us a sense of like kind of the excitement level in Chicago amongst Chicago fans as it pertains to Bedard making his debut tonight.
Well, I think you can really judge how big an event is by the press. Frankly, I mean, we know that money is tight for all press now. Well, the Chicago contingent here today, it's like back when they were in the Stanley Cup final. Like there are like 4 local TV stations that sent reporters here. There's 7 or 8, 9, 10 writers that are here, and usually 3 or 4 of us tops. Like this is a big deal. These are lean times in Chicago. The Cubs just completely collapsed. The Sox are a disaster. The Bears are just the Bears, and the Bulls are they're nothing. They're just mediocre mess. So this is right now the Blackhawks, who were like the worst story in all of pro sports for the last couple of years, are suddenly like Chicago's shining light, and it's all because of this child man who's like with this team right now. This just turned 18-year-old who's he's on every billboard in Chicago. His jersey's everywhere. We see hundreds of fans wearing 98 jerseys now at practices on a weekday when people should be at work. Like this is a really, really big deal. And it's funny, you mentioned Erik Karlsson. That's a huge deal. He's one of the biggest stars in the league. Nobody's talking about him. Kevin Korchinski, he was the number 7 pick in the draft 2 years ago. He is supposed to be like the Blackhawks' next Duncan Keith. He is a huge, massive tentpole prospect for them. He's making his debut tonight, and everyone's like, yeah, whatever. We don't care. We're talking about Connor Bedard. Yeah. Like this is a really, really big deal in Chicago.
Can I know what it's like from your vantage point, just talking to Connor? Like this is like seeing him on billboards, seeing him get that attention, seeing him on all those scrums. He was on the Pat McAfee show the other day.
Yeah.
Like I see this kid.
Yeah. It's a big deal. Yeah.
Is the personality is what it is, and we know how hockey personalities are. And I still don't know if it's just he's just so much of a hockey person that like what personality could be there has been kind of dried out, or if it's just that he's just a teenager and he's still figuring this all out. So I would love to know your impressions of talking to him and trying to get to know him and just what he's like.
It's hard to say so far because it's literally all scrums because there's so many people at every practice right now. I flew to DC for the rookie showcase, that upper deck event, just so I could get a one-on-one with him. That's I got like 15, 20 minutes when it was great. And that's like the only chance I've really had. So, when we get to Denver next week, maybe it'll be a little quieter. Later in the, we try to travel to Florida and Tampa Bay. The Chicago contingent's going to die out. They'll just be the kind of core writers. I think that's when we'll really get to know him. But even over the course of training camp, like when I talked to him at that rookie showcase, I was like September 5th. He was a tough nut to crack. Very pleasant, polite young man, but just didn't want to say a whole lot. But over the course of camp, at least with us, he's starting to recognize us, I suppose. He's getting a little looser. He's having a little more fun. He's cracking a joke here and there. He's little things like today, someone asked just a really strange question about, have you gone and looked up what other top prospects did in their first games, and does that put pressure on you? And he goes, I think only a couple of them have scored 4 goals in a game, talking about Austin Matthews. He's like, I don't have to really worry about that. Like, that's not how this goes. And it's like little things like that where he cracks a joke here and there. A couple of weeks ago, he started talking about how he's learning to cook on his own and how he FaceTimes his mom. And then like someone followed up on it because like they were desperately looking for a lead of some sort. And he basically goes, I don't know why I said that. I'm just trying to say something up here. It's like he's having a little bit of, he's getting a little looser. He's getting a little more comfortable. I mean, there's a lot of cliches and there's a lot of, he's been doing this since he was 14. He has been in scrum since he was 14 years old. That is weird. That is unusual. But so he's very good at it. He's very good at saying the right thing, but not really saying anything, which is a skill, and it's like an acquired skill. But he's loosening up. And I think, I was talking to somebody the other day about this. I see that he could be like a Patrick Kane type down the road with the media where he will be able to talk knowledgeably on literally every single player in the league. Like you could go up to Patrick Kane and say, what do you think about the second penalty killing unit about the Minnesota Wild? And he'll tell you all the changes they've made and why it's working. Like I could see Connor Bedard is such a hockey nerd that I could see him filling that role where he becomes a very useful quote and an interesting guy to talk to because he's just so knowledgeable about the league. But right now he's got his guard up and I don't really blame him, but it's coming down, bit by bit. But until he gets to Montreal and Toronto this week, then
there's no chance.
Yeah,
there's no chance. Oh,
thank God he doesn't speak French, right?
He's going to be inundated when he rolls in. Hey, let's talk a little bit about the expectations for him, Laz, because we're putting him on the same pedestal as we did for the McDavids, the Crosbys when they came in, and I want to know, like, what's a realistic range of points that we should put on Bedard? Like, is it 60 to 80? Is it 75 to 90? Is it more than that, less than that? Like what should a realistic expectation be for this young man going into this rookie season?
It's funny. This morning alone, I read 3 different stories. We're all making our bold predictions, right? Yeah. And I saw somebody had him at over 100 points, which nobody's done since Crosby. Somebody had him had below 50. Said it wasn't really, the team is too bad. He's not going to even score 50. And then most people have him in that 60 to 75 range, I think. I think he's going to be a point-a-game player. I think the league is so high scoring right now. Like a point a game, what Crosby did in 05-06 is absolutely insane. With how low scoring the league was and what a garbage team he walked onto, like to do what he did was ridiculous. There's a reason he's one of the 4 greatest players that have ever lived. Crosby is coming, or Bedard is coming into a much higher scoring era. And he's coming onto a pretty bad team, but he's going to have Taylor Hall on one wing. And on his right wing, he might have Ryan Donato, who's got 30 goals over the last 2 years. It could be Taylor Radish, who's coming off a 20-goal season. Tyler Johnson, who's a very unselfish player. Could be Lucas Reichel, the other first-round pick that's cracking the league now. And he's a great puck retriever and a good playmaker, and he can score goals. I think there's a lot of points to be had out there. He's on the first power play unit. He's on the half wall, Patrick Kane's old spot. He's got Corey Perry in front of the net, one of the great net front presences the league's known. I think there's going to be a lot of points out there for him to get. I mean, I think an 80-point season is entirely reasonable. I don't know if that's unfair to say, but look how many point-a-game guys in the league were there last year. There was like 15, 20 point-a-game guys last year. Like that's what the league is going. And Connor Bedard has all these skills. He's not just a great shot. I think he's going to have more assists than he has goals. Like we're also talking about his shot. But the shot is hard in the NHL. It's hard to score goals. But he is, he's a playmaker too. Like that's what I've been most impressed during the preseason is the passes he can make, the things he sees, the anticipation he has. I think he's going to have a lot of points this year. Team's going to be awful. Like that's the goal. The goal is for Connor Bedard to score a lot of points and for the Blackhawks to get another top 5 pick. That's like the ideal Kyle Davidson scenario right now.
So what about the idea that Connor Bedard is already like a top 50 player? It's one thing to look at his statistical projections, but what about player rankings? Like, I mean, the player tiers that we have, he's in there. He hasn't played an NHL game, but we at The Athletic have him in a pretty high tier. Like, what do you think?
We're just guessing, right? I mean, nobody knows for sure. We never know how this is going to translate. People called Alexis Lafreniere a generational prospect. Google it. Google his name and the word generational. We never know for sure what these guys are going to be, right? So it's people who know the game better than I do making projections. And there are, analytical things you can do how does this in the Western Hockey League tend to translate to the NHL? And you do the math and there's ways to project, but that's all it is a projection. It's entirely possible that he is a top 50 player. I think most people probably think he's going to be. I think he's probably going to be because if he scores 80 points, he's a top 50 player. The question is he going to be a top 5 player? Is he going to be a top 3 player very soon? Is he going to be Connor McDavid, Nathan? Is it going to be McDavid, McKinnon, Matthews, Bedard? Is that going to be the modern day Mount Rushmore for forwards?
You don't have Tkachuk in that Mount Rushmore?
There's a lot of great, but Jason Robertson's maybe my favorite player in the league to watch. Like there's a lot of guys you could put in that list, but I think that right now that trio of McDavid, Matthews, and McKinnon, they're kind of separated. Everybody thinks of them differently. That's like right. Tkachuk was high on my heart ballot last year, but does that mean he's valuable and best or not the same thing, right?
Devils fans are screaming at
their devices. I love
you
Jack
guys.
Hughes in our league.
I'm big on Jack Hughes this year.
My first round pick was Jack Hughes.
Yeah.
Jack Hughes is I think he's gonna have an MVP season. I think he's gonna be the MVP.
He's
this year.
phenomenal.
He's
And
incredible.
when people try to, and that's one of the things about Bedard is they say, oh, he's too little. He's going to struggle going in like Jack Hughes did. I saw Jack Hughes as a rookie. He weighed about 16 pounds. Like he was a little boy, right? Connor Bedard is thick. He's got those Popeye forearms, and he is a sturdy young man. He's 5'9" 3/4, but you cannot knock him over very easily. Like he's gonna be able to hold up.
Hey, before we let you go here, Laz, you mentioned Chicago's ideal scenario this year. Bedard racks up a bunch of points, becomes like the marketing kid. They still finish bottom five.
We're way past the marketing part.
Yeah. Here's a question for you. In our preseason writers poll, we picked kind of all sorts of things, and we chose who's going to finish dead last. And the San Jose Sharks were a runaway favorite.
Yep.
Like I think 90% of us that voted out of the 30 some odd writers that participated, 90% of us took San Jose as the team to finish dead last. Is there any scenario in which you see Chicago finishing below San Jose, or is there any team that you think will be there with San Jose at the bottom of the standings?
Chicago's, it's entirely possible they'll be in the running. Remember, this is basically this team is been completely gutted, right? You're going to have 3 to 4 rookies on the back end every single night. You know, you're counting on an injury-prone Peter Mrazek and an unproven Arvid Soderblom as your goalies. They don't have Kane. They don't have Taves. They don't have Jake McCabe. Like, they've given away a lot of their best players over the last year. Yes, you added Taylor Hall, good player, sure. You add Connor Bedard, great. But we don't know what Kevin Korchinski can do. We don't know what Wyatt Kaiser can do. We don't know what Alex Vlasic can do. We don't know what Lucas Reichel can do. Like this, I feel like the range for the Blackhawks is very high right now. Like they're not going to be a playoff team, certainly not. But they could be. They had 59 points last year. 59. They could be in the 70s this year. Totally reasonable. They could be in the 50s again. Totally reasonable. So they very well could be in the hunt for that last spot. I don't think they will be. I think they'll be like 3rd, 4th, 5th worst to last, which it's fine. They were 3rd to last year, and it turned out okay for them.